Talk about something today that took me a long time to be honest about. For most of my adult life, I had a complicated relationship with money. Not complicated in the way most people talk about it, not extravagant spending or obvious greed. Complicated in a quieter way, the kind that hides behind good intentions and spiritual language and genuinely believes it's doing the right thing. I tried 8 businesses over about 40 years. 8. Some of them were MLM. Some weren't. Every single one of them I believed in when I started. Every single one I prayed about, and every single one eventually didn't work. Now, here's the part I didn't understand for a long time and didn't want to look at, honestly. Not all of those businesses were pure faith. Some of them were fear dressed up in faith language, fear of not having enough, fear of not providing well enough, fear of what retirement was going to look like. And I took that fear, wrapped a Bible verse around it, calling it trusted God, and moved forward. That's not faith. That's denial with a spiritual label on top. And I say that not to be hard on myself or on anybody else who's done the same thing, but because I think it's one of the most common blind spots in the lives of genuinely well-meaning people of faith. We have a tendency to call things blessings when they're really accumulation, to call things faith when they're really fear, to say we're trusting God's provision while simultaneously being driven by a scarcity that we've never really examined. I've heard the prosperity gospel version of this my whole life. The idea that financial success is evidence of God's favor and financial struggle is evidence of something being wrong with your faith. I don't believe that. I've never believed that. But I did absorb something more subtle than that. This quiet equation between doing more and earning more and meaning more. And it drove a lot of decisions I dressed up in better language than they deserved. Here's what 8 failures finally taught me. The first thing is that God is not obligated to bail out decisions we made without genuinely asking Him. There's a difference between praying over a decision and actually seeking God about it. I've done both. They don't feel the same. They don't produce the same results. I got very good at praying over decisions I'd already made. The second thing is that stewardship is a spiritual issue, whether we treat it like one or not. How we handle money reveals something real about what we actually believe about God's provision. If I'm accumulating because I trust God, that looks a certain way. If I'm accumulating because I'm quietly terrified of not having enough, that looks different, even if the language I use for both is identical. The third thing, and this is the one that took me the longest, is that the failures weren't punishment. They were education. Every one of those 8 businesses taught me something I needed to know. How to recognize hype, how to spot what's real versus what's just a good pitch, how to protect myself and my family from people who aren't being honest with me, how to be skeptical in healthy ways. When I started learning affiliate marketing 6 months ago at 77, I had something most people starting out don't have. 4 decades of knowing exactly what doesn't work and why. I could see through things quickly. I asked harder questions. I didn't get swept up in promises that sounded too clean. That wasn't luck. That was 40 years of expensive education that God didn't waste. Now I want to ask you something honestly, and I'm not asking it to produce shame because shame has never helped anybody look clearly at anything. When you think about money, about what you're working toward, about what you want to have, about what you're afraid of not having, how much of that is genuinely rooted in trust? And how much of it is fear that's learned to speak in spiritual language? That's a question worth sitting with privately and honestly, not to come up with the right answer, just to actually know what's driving you. Because the blind spot isn't the money, it's the story we tell ourselves about why we want it. I'm still working on this one. At 77, I don't have it perfectly sorted, but I can look back now on 40 years of chasing things I call faith and see them a lot more clearly than I could in the middle of them. That water's already went down the creek on most of those seasons, but I learned something from every single one of them. If you want to talk through this kind of thing more, faith, money, what it actually looks like, to start something new without repeating old patterns, that's exactly what my free community, The Next Step, is for. The link is in the description. Thanks for spending time with me today, and I'll see you on the next one. Now, before I totally sign off, if this kind of content is helpful to you, I would ask that you'd like and subscribe to this channel.